G'day guys, Shannon from Auburn Aquariums here. So today we're going to be talking about fish selection. So if you've watched the previous video of how to set up a tropical aquarium, the basics, this is basically part 2 of that video. I'm just going to be talking about fish selection. So first off, you want to understand what it is you want to keep before you even buy an aquarium. Work out what you want to keep first. There's various family groups of fish you can go with. Probably the two most popular are your community tropical fish and your goldfish. They can be kept in a relatively medium-sized aquarium. Tropicals can go a bit smaller because there's a lot of smaller species of tropicals that stay small, like for example guppies, various tetra species, stuff like that. Goldfish all do get to a reasonable size, like a lot of your fancy fantails do get to around the 10 to 15 centimeter mark eventually, so you're going to need something that's at least 150 to 200 litres. But yeah, otherwise for tropicals you can go a little smaller if you want to. Okay, so after you've decided what fish you want to keep, then you need to decide what sort of water quality does this fish need, what sort of care does it need, because each individual species has its own needs. So for example, if you're going to go with tropical fish, they like a pH of around 7, where if you were to say go for goldfish, they're like around 7.5 to 8. And then if you want to go the other end of the scale and you want to go to say discus, they look at like around 6.8, 6.5, a bit lower. And then again, American cichlids, they like it about the same as the discus. Then you have your African cichlids, your Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyikan fish, they like it higher again. They like it around 8.5. So understanding your pH is a start, because there's various things that you might or might not put in your aquarium that can determine what your pH will be. What I mean by that is some people will make the very common mistake of setting up, say, a tropical fish aquarium where the fish want a pH of around 7, and they put some nice shells in they found some pretty shells on the beach or something, or they've got these white rocks or white gravel or something like that because they like the look of it. But anything white that's a natural substance, so anything that like shells and coral sand and white rocks, especially Texas holy rock or the bleached bits of dead coral, stuff like that, it's all calcium based. It will buffer your pH quite high, so you don't want to be using any of that with tropical fish. If you're having goldfish or African cichlids, that's fine. You can put as much of that in as you like because they like the pH high. For tropicals, you want everything in the tank to be neutral, so gravel, neutral gravel, rocks that are neutral, so nothing white, no shells, driftwood's fine, stuff like that. So that's the main area where beginners go wrong. And the other thing is just general fish selection. Okay, so you cannot mix goldfish and tropicals, or African cichlids and tropicals, or American cichlids and discus, for example. It just doesn't work. I mean, yes, there are some people out there that do that. It's a fluke that it's worked out. It generally doesn't work out. These fish would never encounter each other in the wild. They all live in completely different water. They all have completely different needs. So it's just not a good idea to mix them. So you want to stick to the one family group. So then it's actually picking your fish and adding them to your aquarium. So when you go to select fish from the aquarium shop, always be aware of disease and parasites when picking fish. So check the fish's eyes, look at its fins, look at its body. The eyes should be clear, the fins should be clear, there should be no marks on its body, it should be swimming comfortably in the water. Things like that. That's what you look for when you're buying a new fish. As far as introducing it to your tank, you'll get the fish in a little bag with some oxygen in there. You'll take the bag home, float the bag in your tank for about 15 minutes. What that is doing is just allowing the new fish to slowly acclimatise to your current temperature. Then you just open the bag, net the fish and release the fish. Don't pour the water that's in the bag into the aquarium, because over the time the fish has been in that bag, travelling home with you in the bag, it's been stressed. So there's going to be a lot of weeing in the bag. Basically it's going to be a bag of ammonia by the time you get home, so you don't want to put that water in your tank. Best way to do this Not a good idea to stick the net in the bag and just chase the fish around, try and net it in the bag. Not a good idea. It stresses it out. The quickest way to do this is get a bucket, sit the net on the bucket, pour the bag through the net, and then pop the fish straight in the tank. That's basically it. The fish is in the net for like 2-3 seconds rather than you chasing it around in a bag. So that would be the best way to introduce them to your tank. There is also a bit of a size of mouth rule with fish. I mean, these guys behind me are quite large. Not all of them, but half of the fish in here are Australian native predators. Like the Saratoga just behind me here, he's quite large. There's also some Tandanus catfish and a longfin eel. They're all Australian native. They all have quite large mouths and they're all carnivorous. So that's a quite obvious thing though, but you can't put smaller fish in with them. That goes for any species though, not just predators. If the biggest fish in your tank is capable of eating the smallest fish, if his mouth is big enough to fit the smallest fish in it, regardless of the species of the fish or the temperament it may have, even if it's a goldfish and they're a vegetarian, a goldfish even will still eat another fish if it can. So you don't want to put a big fish and a small fish together. Small fish and medium fish are okay, medium fish and large fish are okay, provided one doesn't have a mouth big enough to fit another one into it. So that's something else just to keep in mind when purchasing fish. A lot of people don't realise this, so they ignore the size of the fish's mouth, they just buy the fish because they like it and it eats half their tank. Another thing to consider is a lot of fish sold in aquariums are quite small. So you also have to bear in mind, is this fish going to stay this small or is it going to grow bigger? If you're not sure, ask the salesperson that's looking after you at the shop. Otherwise, do your research before you decide what species you want to keep. So if you were to go and buy a fish this big, put it in your tank, but it's a species that grows really big, it'll eventually grow bigger and eat all your fish. Or it'll just end up becoming too large for your aquarium. There is another misconception that goes around. People say fish only grow to the size tank they're in. That's not 100% true. People think they can buy a small fish that does grow big, but they'll keep it in a small tank and it'll stay small. It's not true, guys. While yes, putting it in a smaller tank will stunt the fish's growth, it's not going to stop it completely though. It will still grow. So you want to make sure, again, do your research before purchasing fish. So fish like Australian natives, like for example barramundi and Murray cod and perch, and like back here Saratoga for example, they're all predators but they also get quite large. So you want to have a large tank for them. This tank behind me is 450 litres, so it's more than enough for these fish. Then on the other end of the scale there's also Australian native rainbows. They only get, between 5 to 10 centimetres long. It's the average size for Australian native rainbows. So you can keep them in a much smaller tank. You can keep them in 150 to 200 litre aquarium, no problem. You can have a large school of them as well. Tropicals you can go even smaller. African and American cichlids are another one that do get reasonably large. Like most of your African cichlids get about 20 to 30 centimetres depending on the species. American cichlids can get up to 35 to 40 centimetres. Certain species, like tiger oscars, can get over a foot long. So you want to make sure you do have a large aquarium for those guys, because cichlids are a fast growing fish as well. So those are the main tips for selecting your fish. Make sure they're healthy when you go and look at them in the shop. Check their eyes and fins. Make sure they don't get too big for your aquarium. Make sure their mouth isn't big enough to eat your current fish. And make sure they're in the same family group of the fish you're currently keeping, so that your aquarium's water quality matches those fish and they're going to be happy in your aquarium. That's basically my video of selecting fish, guys. Thanks for watching.